Hello all, in this video we are going to reveal the top 10 openings that were played during the last chess Olympiad. Just imagine the scenario of being one of the top 5 players for each country and having to choose an opening to fight for the points. Which opening would you choose? Well, I suggest you find out what were the top ones in total, so you can imagine how powerful these top 10 are. In total, these openings represent at least 3 in 4 games. 3 in 4 games were played with one of these openings. So you also need to understand what was going on. And let's start with number 10. Number 10, some surprise over here, the Slav defense. The Slav defense is played by d4, black replies with d5, then we enter the queen's gambit. Of course, if now black takes, it will be the king's gambit accepted, and black can refuse the gambit in several ways, but one of the top choices, number 10, was the Slav defense. We protect our pawn with c6, and we are ready for the fight. White can continue with knight c3, black responds with knight f6, knight f3, and now black can choose between two major options: the open Slav, if we accept to take the pawn. Be careful, because if you are white, you need to play a4 over here, because otherwise black will try to secure the pawn and start with another advantage. But of course, white also can consider playing a gambit and try to play a fast development and so on. This gives a sharper game. This is the open Slav. But if you are more solid and you need to guarantee that your country will have at least a draw with black, then probably you'll choose e6, and with this triangle you have a great structure, very hard to break and normally very solid to play. Of course, there are also the fianchetto of the bishop on the king side, or a fast attack on the queen side as other options, but most of the times the Slav will be the open Slav or the semi-Slav. So we have found out one. Let's move on and try to guess number 9. And in number 9, the London system, of course, one of the openings of the fashion. Everyone knows about the London nowadays. Some 10 years ago, nobody was speaking about it, but it's a trend. And for this video, shows 3 setups, considering them the London system. The normal one is to play d4, black replies with d5, then we move out the bishop, our London bishop, to f4. The idea is we will play e3, and we don't want the bishop to be locked inside the pawn chain. So now we can go with knight, probably black can attack, and then we will develop our knight to d2, the other knight to f3, bishop can come out to e2, with simple castle. We can protect our bishop, our London bishop. Don't forget this London bishop. And so the system is more or less easy to play, and that's why it's popular, because we kind of don't care what black is doing, and we'll do the same development also again. But other options is, for example, if black plays king f6, so not directly a symmetrical opening, now we can again bring our knights out. Black can go for an Indian setup, and again we have the London system going on, but this time against an Indian setup. And finally, the third option that I considered over here was when black plays the knight to f6, but the Jobava London. It's in fashion also. Jobava London, a mixer of a strong attack with the London system. The idea is, if black isn't careful, I will play e4 and control the perfect center. So black needs to respond, and the best answer is to play d5. Now it's not possible to get the e4 for free, so white goes with the London setup. There are a lot of things that we can do with white, but of course we will play something in the lines of what we are used to do before. So three setups: the normal main line, the Indian London, and Jobava London. So this accounts for number 9. Let's go for number 8. And number 8 is the King's Indian defense, one of the most popular and also one of the most complex. Just notice that we still are playing d4. Just start with d4 and the black will just play a setup. Fianchetto is bishop on g7. Normally black plays this against almost all openings except e4. So the the continuation can be something on these lines. Now we can play the knight. Black tries to avoid the center control indirectly from white. White can play another move, and now we have several setups. Normally we can go this way and probably castle, controlling the center. Probably we now can advance something in these lines. There are a lot of complexity when you play the King's Indian defense. Just remember the main idea is to get this setup on the king side. It's a very robust setup where normally white will play on the queen side and black tries to make a killing attack on the king side. So this is not a surprise. It's a top 10 opening. And now let's find out what was the number 7 opening. And for the first time, an e4 opening, the French defense. Vive la France! And we can start with e4 and e6 is the French reply. Normally, the French will attack the center. We occupy the center with white, and the French immediately tries to contest the center. And now white has basically three choices. It can take, it can advance, or it can protect. So if it takes, it's a simple symmetric situation. This is the French exchange openings, and we'll try to develop our pieces in several ways. There are several ways to develop our pieces, but I consider this not to be the top choice on the top level. Normally, they play the advanced French, and if the white piece is advanced, well, normally they strike back, attacking the base of the pawns. So normally white protects, and then the development is again very natural. The sharpest one probably is to defend the pawn, either with this move or with this move. We basically have the classical or the Tarash, if I'm not mistaken. But basically, black, if it wants to simplify with either choice that white can make with the knight, it can simply take and then play from here. But this is called the Rubinstein variation, and now black can try to place two knights developed, or it can, for example, go with the bishop here to attack along this diagonal, and then only after to come with the knights, and it's prepared to exchange one bishop for one knight. So this is the exchange, the Rubinstein variation. But of course, it can also choose to play in a classical manner with knight f6. Then normally the knight is attacked, and we are trying to get this pawn protected because black will attack the other one. So the play can continue something along these lines. Now black has a lot of choices. It can bring the queen, it can go b6, it can take, it can go bishop e7. There are several a6 also to play b5 after. So there are a lot of choices. The French defense is very known, and it's not a surprise to be in the top 10 of the Olympiads. So let's now move on to find out what was the number 6 opening. And the number 6 opening was the Italian opening, one of the oldest openings we have registered. So we play e4, and as a classical player, e5, we attack the pawn, black defends the pawn, and now white develops in an aggressive fashion against the f7 weakest point from black with bishop c4. This opening can be very solid, very calm, or very sharp. It depends on the options both players want to do, but normally black has a bit more word in saying if I want to go be more aggressive or not. If black plays in a symmetrical way with bishop c5, then white can simply keep developing with, for example, playing the gioco pianissimo, o jogo calmissimo, or a bit for c3 and then d4 to break the center, castle, and then after something quiet, bring the rook, bring the knight, and develop calmly, and we have a simple strategic game ahead. But black can also be sharp and play the two knights. And if it plays the two knights, well, white has the option to play v3, that is very solid, and normally we get something in the lines of h3, castle, d6, and this is also a bit strategic. Or white can decide for a more aggressive approach, forcing black into a sharp game, attacking the f7 pawn. And now black is forced to play this move. White takes, and now one of the most popular replies from black, from newbies, is to play taking the pawn, but this gives options for white to play a super aggressive gambit, taking the knight, and then coming back with the queen with checking and attacking the knight, which forces the black king to go to the center, and this is really crazy. White will keep attacking everywhere and castling and bringing the other bishop and so on. This is the FIDE liver attack. It's very known for the beginners because of the sharpest of the options. But normally, what black does is attack the bishop, then the bishop moves, attacks, and then probably retreats, and so we will have a normal Italian on the two knights. But of course, this is going a bit deeper. What we need to remember, what we need to remember is the Italian normally is this opening, and now black can play bishop c5 or knight f6. So, going back to the start, let's find out which are the top 5. And the first one is, without not surprise again, the Spanish opening. Also one of the oldest. Some consider the king of the opening. I think yes, because besides being one of the oldest, is one of the most played and analyzed, of course. So the start is for e5. We attack the pawn. The knight defends the pawn. And now white simply attacks the knight. The idea is to take the knight. When you take back, I win a pawn. Okay, you can't do this now because okay, if now, for example, I attack the bishop takes, and the pawn is not hanging because the queen will be able to take it back. Now, for example, check, and well, the position is very simplified, not the ideal situation for white for sure if they want to play for a win. So normally here black attacks the bishop and the bishop retreats. Then we have a an interesting, very deep continuation. Okay, now we are protecting this pawn, so we are ready to take the knight. So black attacks the bishop, and only now we protect the pawn. We are prepared to break up on the center, and now we will play a very useful move because we don't want to protect the center and get bishop g4. So first we get this one, and now black can continue in several ways. That is the Shegorden variation, the Braya, the Zaitsev. There are a lot of possibilities. Grandmasters love to play this kind of positions. But there's another position we can get in the opening, that it's the Berlin defense. This was played by Kramnik against Kasparov in their World Championship match and considered basically one of the reasons Kramnik beat Kasparov. Very solid defense. It can go very fast for an end game where normally a draw is expected. Still under lots of analysis, but basically either a6 or knight f6 complete the options for the Spanish. But okay, for the Spanish we are done. Let's move on and find out number 4. And number 4 is the English opening. I'm not so familiar with the English opening. I confess that I played it basically just with the black side. The English opening says, oh, I'm tired of lots of d4 theory, I'm tired of e4 theory, so let's start and move on away and play just chess. Of course, nowadays this is not true because most of the times black players are prepared to play against the English, but nevertheless it's not so common as d4 or e4. But this opening is also I don't say this opening. This first move is also played to avoid lots of openings because many times we can go like, for example, let's say knight f6, knight c3, and now, for example, uh, black can go to the fianchetto, but now e4 avoids the Grunfeld because we control this situation and we avoid the Grunfeld. So black is forced to play bishop g7, and instead of a Grunfeld, we are playing a King's Indian defense. So this to say that many times c4 is used as a way to avoid certain variations or even certain openings. But it has theory alone, and for this video I just considered openings that started with c4 and were staying just in English territory. And that means that white will play either knight c3, knight f3, the two knights English, or it will fianchetto the light square bishop, that it's the most common, and then play in a simple way to play on the center, and the knight will go to e2 instead of f3. So basically we can get a reverse Sicilian. If you remember well, the Sicilian is played with e4, c5, and now we get it, but with white with one move ahead. Well, we have proved through long years of analysis that this doesn't give too much for white anyway, because sometimes having an extra move is not that important in the opening. And but now, for example, we can get a simple development where the bishop will place pressure along the diagonal, and then the plan is to go over here and something like this, and very solid, and then we get a strategical game, of course. But we can also play the knight again, the knight again, and so we are trying. Okay, I don't know if this is played anyway, but anyway, we can get a symmetrical English also. As I told you, I'm not so familiar with this, but there are a lot of options, and for sure, top grandmasters know how to play it. And we should know also, at least with black pieces. Okay, so number 4, it's done, and we are reaching top 3. Let's find out number 3. And number 3 is Queen's Gambit Decline. Okay, Queen's Gambit Decline. This is a whole life of opening. the the Queen's Gambit is d4, d5, and c4, and now anything that declines the gambit, in theory, it's Queen's Gambit Decline. But I have excluded some that I consider exclusive openings. One is the Slav opening, of course. The other we can get is the Tarrasch opening. Okay, there are more openings, like for example, I move the knight, but normally the Queen's Gambit Decline is played with e6, and now if I move the knight, then I can get this situation. So there are a lot of situations with the Queen's Gambit Decline, but the lines that I think are more characterized of the Queen's Gambit Decline are more on these lines. And now we can play bishop g5, bishop g4, but there is one option here of the exchange that first I take on the center, then I attack the knight. So if I want to play solid over here, I can just develop my knight, and then I give again this one. Next I will develop, I will play e3. Normally this bringing the bishop out and then moving e3 is very common, because I don't want my bishop to be locked inside my pawn chains. And then I bring out the bishop and castle and so on. Black will probably play knight bd7. There are a lot of theory over here. This is more or less what we can expect in a Queen's Gambit Decline. Very popular opening, but now it comes for me a surprise in number 2. I don't know if you have guessed, but caro-kann differs a top 2. This is a big surprise. Why? Probably because we are in an Olympiad. We have the 5 top players for each country, and they want not to lose with black, so they play more solid. And what is the solidest open of them all? Normally we consider the caro-kann to be one. So caro-kann, it's e4, and we reply c6. c6, normally white grabs the center, of course, and the contest will be made by d5. Of course, this is to release our bishop. Our bishop is not locked inside our diagonal, but this kind of mix a bit with the knight option. So, as in the French, we have 3 options. We can take the pawn, we can advance the pawn, or we can protect the pawn. Each one is possible. Let's go on. First, by seeing what happens if I take the pawn. I can take back, and now white can decide between a solid approach with something like bishop d3, the knight comes, and then I protect the pawn, and then I develop normally. Okay, this is very quiet, but normally when we take the pawn with white, we are expecting a pawn of attack. Pawn of attack is a very aggressive opening where we attack the pawn, and normally black waits, and then we can take and play with an isolated queen pawn. This is very aggressive. You should study if you want to play this one. If it develops one more piece with knight c3, then black can take the pawn. It's the easiest way. And now black has 2 options. Either play the knight to confront our knight, and if you do that, white can simply take, and then we can just develop our pieces, and these pawns will be a good protection for our king, so no worries about it. But of course, it can be played in a more quiet manner, bringing the bishop, and when the knight goes out, then we can play this simple opening, developing, and so on. So this is another option for the caro-kann. Probably nowadays the trend is to advance the pawn, and when we advance the pawn, we can get the bishop outside immediately. and then we have developed the bishop, and next we are preparing e6. White can play several options over here, the tile variation, and then contesting if the bishop is too soon outside or not. But this is pretty studied and probably the most popular reply to the caro-kann. But black has another interesting aggressive option. It can play c5, and if white takes, then it can just simply re-attack the pawn again, and normally white will try to develop again, and we are going to start to put pressure along the pawns, or we can take it, and so on. So the pawn of the option to take the pawn is also one, and we have seen the caro-kann in action. Top two defense, and now let's move on to number one. Not with much surprise, I bet. I bet you all know what is coming here. Sicilian. Well, the Sicilian. E4 and C5. We are indirectly contesting the center and saying white won't play D4. One of the most popular openings. Just get the 21% of games played on this opening, and you realize that 1 in 5 games was a Sicilian. Well, you're seeing uh, hundreds of countries, 4 players playing each time from the top 5 each country brought to the tournament, and 1 game out of 5 will be a Sicilian. So this kind of explains how important this opening is. Why this opening? Well, I think it's the same situation with caro-kann. Caro-kann probably, well, we don't want to lose with black, so we go with caro-kann. But the other option is we need to win with black, with all the pieces in all boards. So let's move on and play a Sicilian, because this creates imbalance immediately from the start. And so the imbalances are very important to win. If you don't have imbalance in the position, it's very harder to win. So now it's white to play. And of course, white may want to control the center, developing pieces, and go with an open Sicilian. Now, black can go normally with one of these options, knight c6, d6, or e6, and whatever the option, let's see, for example, d6, we can play an open Sicilian. An open Sicilian, white gets aggressive, and black tries to go to the end game with better central control because of the 2 pawns on the center. But of course, before we reach here, there is a lot white can do. White can play in a more closed approach, and for example, Grand Prix attack. It can play the Alapa. The idea is to get d4 and take back with the pawn. We can play, uh, move this one to the King's Indian attack. So even bishop c4 is an option. I have seen also d4. I have seen f4. So basically we can play a lot of things over here to avoid a pure Sicilian. Also, there's another thing to remember. If, for example, we go for the open Sicilian, it's not sure that we are going to get an open Sicilian, because if black plays, for example, d6, well, I can attack it with the Moscow variation. Now I need to defend the bishop, and the position kind of gets more simplified than the Sicilian player was expecting. And if I get the knight c6, also white has an option of playing the Rossolimo variation, that it's very common nowadays because they are all trying to avoid the Sveshnikov and other stuff that Magnus has been playing, and proving that it's very solid. And of course, we can play French setups, and white can avoid them with going, for example, changing for the King's Indian attack, like Fischer did In the days he was at the top, he did like this a lot against E6 Sicilians. But if he played an open Sicilian, it's for sure a game both players want to win. The most common one, of course, it's D6, D4 takes, knight takes. The knight attacks the other pawn, knight C3 to defend, and now A6. This is the Najdorf variation, and there are a lot of choice over here. The white can go Rouser style, it can go English attack style, it can go several ways. There are many classical theory and sharp ones and modern ones with H3 and so on. So basically, it's a good way to finish finish with the Sicilian and the most popular of the Sicilians, the Najdorf, with lots of fights going on everywhere in the Olympiad. So basically, this finish our video. So here are the list. The ones that surprised me more for sure was the Slav defense, and basically number one surprise was the caro-kann being so high. These are the trends. These are what the top players of each country is playing. Let me know in the comments where you from, what country are you from, and if you want, you can expand with what openings did surprise you and what openings would you play if you were representing your country in the Olympiad. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you again in next videos. Have a great day.